Well,
Hey toy fans, Aaron here. Today taking a look at the Vintage Saga Collection IG-88. So let's head to the table and check this one out. Looking at it first on the packaging, this did come in that clamshell case, as did the Vintage Original Trilogy Collection cards. Obviously mine's still taped up and sealed, so I'm not taking it out, but through that clamshell, you do get a look at what was the original Empire Strikes Back card for IG-88. You got that Star Wars Empire Strikes Back logo there, his name with Bounty Hunter underneath that. Nice photo off to the side of IG-88, and then inside that bubble, of course, you see the figure with the included accessories. Down at the bottom, you got the Star Wars Saga Collection logo here, since this is where it was in the line at the time. And while it looks a little blue because it's reflecting off my paper, I'll move this around a little bit, but you see that that silver is indeed a nice silver foil, nice and reflective, looking pretty good. You may have noticed as I panned down that on the outside of that clamshell was an Ultimate Galactic Hunt sticker. That's because this came out around the same time as the 30th anniversary line started hitting. The first handful of those cards or so on that regular looking line had some gold foil on it, but also you had a mail away offer to receive 7 coins in a little black box. Back side of the card looking the same as the rest of that vintage line. The top half is showing you that original packaging that IG-88 came on with the year of its release, and then off to the side, instead of a bio about IG-88, you were getting a description about the focus of this line, what's it's about, why it's on the vintage cards. Along the bottom of the card, you had 5 other figures that were also available in the line at the time, being shown with the original carded release. And now taking a look at this out of the packaging, I gotta say, I mean, this is a top-notch looking figure. I'd say this has to rank among some, maybe top 10 of 3 3/4 inch figures that were released. Now, they have released a couple versions of the IG-88 figure. It came out in the Shadows of the Empire comic 2-pack, and then also came out in the Power of the Jedi line. And here, side by side, just for comparison, here's how he looked in the Power of the Jedi line. This figure does stand a little bit taller. It comes in about 5 3/4 inches. And now, not that the Power of the Jedi figure was, awful by any means, but obviously, as you can see, they really took some extra steps with this newer release. Overall, the figure does have a nice kind of pewter colored look to it, and a pretty subtle rust color wash to the overall figure. But in the kind of deep crevices of some of those lines and creases of the sculpts, you can definitely see some more of that rust color just kind of sitting in there, highlighting those lines a little bit more. At the head area, certainly he looks like IG-88 should look like, kind of that elongated round head. Some lines sculpted running around the head itself, around the neck area, little indents here and there, and then through the kind of I guess you'd call it the face area of the figure, or the eyes, some various red sensors painted in. Painting for those red dots are looking pretty good. As you get to the body of the figure, this is where things really, really shine on this release. As IG-88 looked in the movie, it looked like a droid that was cobbled together with just a bunch of spare parts. And I feel like that's pretty well represented here, in contrast to the figures that have been released before, where you can tell it's a sculpted piece of plastic with just, some detailing etched into the plastic. This feels like it's a lot of little parts creating the whole piece. And that's probably overstating it a bit, but it helps. You got this loose bandolier here. Nice texturing, nice painting to that. Little bits of, I'd say black, maybe a very dark gray coloring to some of those pouches and some of those things sculpted in there. Along the back side of that bandolier, you got some thermal detonators sculpted in there with a little bit of painting to those. There is a holster on the back side, and then you can see he's got this blade on the back. I don't think he had that in the movie. Not sure where that came from, but it still looks cool with him having it on his back. And that is removable, and I'll show that later. Through the rest of that chest area, again, just lots of sculpting in here. A little bit of different coloring for this piece going over the top of the shoulder. And through that waist area, you've got all these little silver canisters painted in there. You can see it's attached to the main body on his right side, your screen right side, his left part of the chest. That little hose is attached to the upper part of the chest. But then the rest of that piece is just, it's separately sculpted and just laying loose around the figure. And that's kind of what I mean, is that, this whole piece here is separate. So it helps give that dimension to the figure. You see a lot of gaps and stuff on the inside of that. But otherwise, for the rest of it, and especially through that waist area, just obviously just lots of little mechanical bits sculpted in there. Certainly looks like, hefty pieces of metal or something that would be on the character. For the arms, you're getting pretty much what you expect to see. Long, skinny, round arms. Very nice sculpting to those. Hands of the figure are looking pretty good. Basically, it's, claw hands. And through the leg area, it's what you expect. Just thin legs, really long, but a fantastic sculpt to it. I like all these little loose hoses that are dangling and running around the sides of the legs. Dangling might be the wrong word. They're still attached, but, like I said, you got that separation. It's not just sculpted and etched into the plastic of the leg. It's its own piece, and that's what kind of just gives this thing so much more dimension than we've seen before. And for the feet, it's basically what you expect to see. You know, these big blocks of metal kind of look like small mouse droids to me. So yeah, head to toe, just a really good looking figure. As far as articulation, going in on the head area, where these eyes and, you know, let's call it the nose or whatever, that part articulates and swivels around 360 degrees. And then separately, you got this little neck piece right down here. It does turn a little side to side on me. I got to say, some of my joints were kind of stuck together and they feel a little gummy or whatever. So I don't know if this part is supposed to spin all the way around or if, you know, maybe it's just loose, but it's got a little bit of side to side along with the top part of this head. As for the shoulder area, of course, you get your 360 degree rotation through there. And then for swiveling, right here at the top of the joint where it hits that shoulder area, you get your swiveling in there, side to side. Pretty decent range, but this little like water spout looking thing is kind of hitting the back. But, you know, depending where you place that arm, you can certainly get it spinning all the way around. As you may have noticed at that elbow area right there, you get a good bend. I don't know how much degree range is that, but it's got a great bend to that. As far as the waist articulation, it's actually right here at the midsection of the chest where this round part meets the lower part of the body. You do get a very good bend in there, forward and back. Kind of hard to do and still show on the camera, but as you can see, that moves there. And then also you get your rotation in that area. This, you know, belt thing here, for lack of a better word, I guess, it'll swivel with it because it's attached at the top of the chest. As far as the leg articulation, you're going to be able to swivel these out about that far and then back this far. One unfortunate thing is that this little hose here, when you do any swiveling of this left leg here, just pops right out. So you just got to pop that back in once you're done. But as you see, it doesn't take much for that little piece to pop out. Otherwise, though, this little outer piece on each leg does swivel side to side. Sorry, my thumb just keeps grabbing that. But as you can see, you get some movement in there, and you could actually spin it all the way around. And then also, aside from these outer pieces swiveling, you do get some rotation on that upper thigh for swiveling there. I mean, you can turn that and then turn those. I mean, so it's kind of moving together. But these are independent pieces from each other and then swivel. As for the knee joints, you can bend it back. Again, these hoses here are going to limit your movement on each leg as you go backwards, but certainly no problem bringing them forward. And then at that joint also, you get some swiveling side to side. Once again, your movement's going to be limited, especially as that wraps around. It's going to pull on that little piece there. And then for the feet, you get a little bit of forward and back. Nothing major, but I think you get what you need for the figure to stand up. As far as accessories, well, he's got 3 of them. First up, his larger rifle here. Overall, the design of it certainly seems like it looks like it did in the movie. Very nice sculpt to it. And I really like the paint job they give it. You know, mostly a black weapon, but lots of silver weathering painted on both sides. Definitely giving it, you know, a scuffed up look to it. Looks like this weapon's been around for a while. And he can hold this weapon easily in either hand. Onto the second weapon he comes with, which is just a small stormtrooper blaster. I don't recall him holding this in the movie, and I think the original vintage version maybe came with this, so maybe that's why they included it. But nevertheless, sculpting to this is looking pretty good. And same here, black weapon, but you got lots of silver painting on there, giving it some weathering. And now on the back side of the bandolier, he does have this holster that I mentioned earlier. I think the idea is that you would put this blaster in there if you didn't want it in his hand, but it just doesn't fit in there. The thermal detonators certainly get in the way, and it just doesn't seem like it fits overall. So either it's not really meant to go in there, or they just didn't make this part very well. And then for the final accessory, it comes with this big knife. Pretty simple design to it. Just some rounded bits on the bottom of the handle area, and then you do have some nice beveling on that blade edge. In this case, no real special painting or anything to that. He holds it rather well in his hands. You're going to have to stretch those claws out a little bit, but as long as you're not keeping his hands holding that blade, I don't think you're going to stretch out those hands too much, really. And then as you saw earlier, this just rests right there inside that bandolier. Snaps right in there, no problem. So overall, like I've already said, this really is just a fantastic looking figure. Even though it would have been nice if that blaster would have fit in the holster, it's not enough to make me like this any less. I think Hasbro did an awesome job with the detailing of the sculpt and the painting that they did to bring this to life in 3 3/4 inch form. And so that wraps up this look at IG-88. As always, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this figure in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.